Thanks, Corla. Minister, this question relates to whether you've had any contact with your colleague in the Department of Foreign Affairs with regard to reviewing the practice of authorising permits for weapons and munitions to transit through Shannon, and it's against the backdrop of the fact that last year a total of 272 flights were given permits to take weapons and explosives through Shannon Airport by you. The majority of these flights were taking US troops between military bases and locations in the Middle East where we know a slaughter against innocent people is underway, and I'm wondering what you're doing to review that procedure.
Well, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. My department continues to consult with the departments referred to by the Deputy in relation to each application received for permits under the Air Navigation Order of 1973, and I'm in contact with these departments in relation to policy and administration matters related to the 1973 order. The primary purpose of the Air Navigation, Carriage of Munitions of War, Weapons and Dangerous Goods Order of 1973, as amended, is ensuring the safety of aircraft and those on board. The Deputy's concerns relate primarily to foreign policy considerations. These are not my responsibility. The right for civil aircraft to overfly and to land for refuelling purposes are known as the first two freedoms of the air. Such rights are vital for the operation of airlines around the world, including Irish Airlines, and it's only on the rare occasions that a state would deny such rights. Civil aircraft being used to transport military personnel and goods have been landing in and overflying Ireland now for many decades. The vast majority of the airlines operating these flights are from the US and other NATO countries. However, exemptions have also been granted to airlines from Russia and Switzerland over the years. These flights are operated in compliance with the International Civil Aviation Organization safety rules. This period covers many international crises and military confrontations. Ireland has not sought to withdraw or suspend such permissions at any stage during this time. I should also point out that successive governments have considered that the granting of such permission is compatible with Ireland's traditional policy of military neutrality, which is characterised by non-participation in military alliances.
Clare Daly.
Minister, it is your responsibility, it's your department that grants the permits. I take it from your answer that you're saying you're going to do nothing to change this. Over 550 permits were granted to airlines carrying troops, weapons and explosives to their forward operating bases, all from NATO countries by your department, and they're en route to an area where we know is currently engaged in war. Now, under the legislation that you quoted back, you are authorised to search that aircraft. It's a part of your powers that are there that you have chosen not to invoke. Now, when this government came to power, in the programme for government, you said, we will enforce the prohibition on the use of Irish airspace, airports and related facilities for purposes not in line with the dictates of international law. Now, we know from FOI information that munitions and explosives, which could have been the components of cluster bombs, went from the US to Saudi Arabia. We know that the US is facilitating the illegal and breaches of international law in Yemen with the massacre of civilians there.
Thank you.
Now, therefore, you would be in breach of the programme for government, in breach of international law, unless you carry out the searches that you are lawfully permitted to do before granting permits. And I really don't know why you aren't doing it. You might enlighten us.
Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy, all of the actions that I am taking and all of the way that I am implementing this legislation relates to the clear policy of our government in relation to neutrality and in relation to aviation safety. As I have said to you in my own open answer to your question, my responsibilities in this are very, very clear. They relate to safety. I consult with the relevant government departments at all times in any decisions that I make. I have done so, and this government has continued to do so. All of the decisions that we make are clearly framed and undertaken in the powers that are available to me under the 1973 Act. and I have made available to you all of the information in relation to applications that I have dealt with, the origin of such flights and the reasons for decisions that I have made.
Deputy Clare Daly.
Yeah, Minister, you say you're interested in safety, that you're not interested in foreign policy, yet you're quoting neutrality. I'm wondering how neutrality is advanced by you authorising the transiting of 190 metric tonnes of explosives and munitions to Afghanistan, where we know the Taliban are in control. Not much for the safety of the people in that region, or indeed the safety of the people in Yemen, I would think, in that regard. So maybe you could deal with the issue that these permits that you grant, the Secretary-General of your department was before the Petitions Committee this time last year, and he said that those permissions were only given based on strict criteria, that those munitions were not visible, were not on board, that everything was put in the hold. Now, in our court case earlier this year, direct evidence was given, which was not contradicted, which was actually accepted by the judge without qualification, that such armoury was on board the aircraft, in clear breach of the direction of your Secretary-General. So how, in God's name, does that advance safety, that that's what you're concerned, not to mind the neutrality, that I don't see how we could claim that, given that we're facilitating all of this movement to NATO countries only, and the US in particular. But maybe you could deal with that breach of your permits there.
Minister, to conclude.
Thank you. Deputy, I never said in any answer that I gave to you that I was not interested in neutrality. What I explained very clearly is I have responsibilities in this area in relation to the aircraft, to safety of these aircraft and safety within our own airspace. And all decisions that I make in regard to that are focused on those objectives and also taken in consultation with the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Department of Defence. In relation to the questions that you put to me in relation to the safety of these aircraft and the material that is on them, it's very, very clear, I've answered this to you before, that the flights with dangerous goods that are given exemptions are generally carrying munitions such as cartridges, ammunitions, and some categories of explosive devices and fuses. These must always be packaged securely, and on passenger aircraft they must be stored in the hold so that they are inaccessible during the flight.
Thank you. Deputy Timmy Dooley has the next priority question, number 4.